What's up, everyone? Welcome to Stadium Drive Week 4. We're at Granville High School for the Blue Aces versus the Heath Bulldogs, Will Ford and Aaron Sprague. How's it going, Aaron? Week 4, man. It's almost midway through the season already. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's really went really fast, but definitely excited to be here for this Week 4 matchup because this is a premier game within it's actually a non-league game because Heath is in the smaller school division. Granville's in the larger school division of the Licking County League. But, again, he suffered his first loss of the season last week to Norwayne. Kind of made some mistakes, and it was kind of a lopsided, surprising score. Meanwhile, Granville is just reloaded, and they're undefeated. So that makes this game tonight at the Hodge big time in the LCL.
Yeah, and if you look at Granville, their defense through the first 3 weeks has only allowed 8 points defensively in 2 straight shutouts. They have given up a lot of rushing yards, but they have just taken it to two offenses defensively, and so it's going to be really exciting tonight to see these two teams go at it and do battle.
I mean, I don't know if everyone else is excited. I mean, I think if you look at the slate of games, especially the slate of games that we're covering this week across Ohio, this one definitely sticks out. The Licking County League, all the teams are very close in proximity. Mm-hmm. These kids know and see each other consistently around town, and with the implications, it's almost too big of a game to be this early in the season.
Right.
From a playoff standpoint and playoff points and that type of thing. But, I mean, I'm hyped because the town on both sides of the ball tonight, I really couldn't predict how it's going to go because it's going to come down to just a few different things.
Right, and we were looking up the history of this matchup earlier today on our way here. It's kind of surprising to learn that there was a stretch of 4 years where they didn't play each other.
Right.
2017 through 2020, they've played the last 3 years, but over the last 10 years, though, they've only played 6 times, which is kind of surprising, and Granville has won all but one of those matchups.
Yeah, so we look back through the history, Will, and, from the year 2020 to 2017, so a 4-year stretch, these two teams didn't play. They've played 21, 22, and now 23, with Granville winning those both most recent matchups. Yep. And they also played then from, it would have been 2016 back, all the way back, and we went back to 2013, and Heath had only won one of those games. It was in 2016, and that was Heath's 10-0 season, the best team in school history. That year they defeated Granville. So in their last 6 meetings since 2020 or 2013, the series is 5-1 in favor of Granville.
Yeah, so an opportunity for Heath tonight to get back at it and get a win. And the interesting thing to note, too, is that Heath's win was at home.
Yes.
So at Swank Field, they have not won at Granville in quite some time. So it's an opportunity to get a win here on the road. Right,
and really this season is really cool for both teams. One, because Heath, we knew they were going to be pretty good. They returned everybody.
Yes.
So last week's loss to a good Norwayne team, I guess maybe not surprising, but a little shocking the way Heath had been playing. But then you have Granville on the flip side where everyone said, is this a down year for the Aces?
And I talked about that with Coach Schroeder in the summer. Yeah, everybody was counting the Aces out, and yeah.
They've really played well, though. I mean, they have really played like a veteran team. They've had some great veteran leadership, and they have definitely filled the highlight reel for us here at Storied Rivals every week, putting together those Unreal Weekly highlights. They have definitely put on a show. We did talk to Coach Schroeder here a minute ago and asked him about the teams playing each other in the rivalry, and because it is a non-conference game essentially, it's a crossover game between the small and large school. He said they're actually not playing next year. So they'll be adding a different game on the schedule. I think he said Heath will be playing Licking Valley now in Week 4 instead. So, but that will get shifted up a little bit. But, with these teams close together, though, you like to keep those games going and keep that rivalry going.
For sure. Well, you're filming this game tonight. Which side are you filming?
Yeah, so I'll be I think I'm in the Granville locker room. I like to bounce around because in Week 1 I was with the Heath Bulldogs, checked them out for the first time, and really liked what I saw. So now going to get the inside look at the Granville Aces and kind of how they're operating this season. And our guy Sean will be here covering on the Heath sideline, and Will, we're covering, I've lost count, over 25 games probably tonight. I know you'll get to the schedule here in just a little bit.
Of course, yep.
And go over the complete schedule. But, week 4, man, it is fun, and we are pumped to be here. We got to shout out our sponsor, MaxEffortMuscle.com. I heard those guys are going to be in the building tonight because they actually train a few of these athletes that are playing here today over at Old School Gym. But Max Effort Muscle, the best tasting protein on the planet. If you need protein for your workouts or for your daily life, best tasting protein on the planet, Max Effort Muscle. And, of course, we got the Mino Recovery. Our player of the game tonight will get a prize pack from Max Effort Muscle. So we always do that every week. That's always exciting. But MaxEffortMuscle.com, our sponsor tonight, Will. Excited.
Yeah, so check out the unreal highlights of this game for both sides next week. And we'll be back with more Stadium Drive after this. Sweet. So Aaron had to hop out. He's filming tonight. He's on the Granville side for this game between the Blue Aces and the Heath Bulldogs. We have our guy Sean Fisher on the Heath side for the unreal highlights that you'll see next week. But thanks so much for joining us here on Stadium Drive Week 4. And the graphic you're seeing on the screen for the Granville defense through 3 weeks of the season has been pretty remarkable. They're 3-0, obviously, but only 8 points allowed all season long, which is pretty incredible. And it's a defensive performance unlike anything we've seen out of some teams in this area for the start of this season. They've had 2 straight shutouts. They won 31-0 last week against Johnstown Monroe, and then I believe 15 or 16-0 against Clear Fork week 2. But highlighted in red at the bottom, 591 rush yards allowed through 3 games, 197 yards per game. When you look at that, you might think, man, that's a lot of yards. How is Granville 3-0 giving up that much yardage defensively? And it's actually pretty simple because I talked to head coach Wes Schroeder about this earlier in the week. And Granville's a team that likes to play fast. They play very up-tempo. Their offense doesn't slow down. Defensively, they have been playing against teams the first 3 weeks that primarily run the football. I mean, and by primarily, I mean 80-90% of the time they're going to run the ball. So you're going to give up some yardage just as the game wears on. That's just how it goes. But nonetheless, though, it is something that you want to kind of improve defensively, allow a little less running the football. But Heath, tonight, they're a little bit more balanced. They can run it pretty well, but they also throw it very well as well. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup for Granville tonight defensively. But talking to head coach Wes Schroeder, getting ready for this game against Heath, talked about his defense only allowing 8 points through the first 3 games. We'll talk with Coach Schroeder, and then we'll have more on the Granville Aces. Thanks so much for joining us here on Stadium Drive Week 4, here live on Storied Rivals Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Here's Wes Schroeder.
So 3-0 to start the season, Coach, but your defense has only allowed 8 points, which is pretty insane. It's a pretty insane statistic to start the year. What's the secret to how well your defense has performed so far this year?
I think a lot goes into that. I think we had some favorable matchups. We're pretty good at stopping the run, and I think the teams that we saw we matched up with pretty well, and our kids played hard, and they played disciplined down football. And when we got a chance to get guys to the ground, we did. We did give up a touchdown against week 1 against Marion Franklin. We had them in the 4th and 6th, and we had them bottled up and kind of let them get out. But other than that, we played pretty well. We still got a lot of room to grow, but I think the kids are playing really fast. And that's what we want to see.
For sure, yeah. Now, just looking at some stats over the first 3 weeks, I noticed that if there was a weakness with your defense, it would maybe be the run defense. Like last week against Johnstown, 252 yards rushing allowed, and I know Heath last week, who's your opponent this week, they ran for 211 yards. So is that kind of the point of emphasis this week, is kind of maybe shoring up things in the run defense, plugging some holes so that way Heath isn't as effective running the football, and then that matchup is a little bit more favorable for you?
I mean, yeah, I think we've given up first downs, which is to be expected against teams, like we saw with Johnstown and Clear Fork. They run the ball 90% of the time, so your run defense isn't going to be as good,
right?
And your pass defense can look better because I think they completed one pass, but they only threw it, a handful of times. So,
sure.
Yeah, we got to get better. We always got to get better, and I think, we want to get better in all areas. So, yeah, stopping the run is always important. And I think it starts with 10, Braden Bales. But, yeah, so if we can contain him, that's kind of a important part for us. I mean, we got to stop their backs. They got a couple nice backs, and they got an experienced offensive line. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff we got to stop. It's not just the run defense in our mind.
So that wasn't the whole conversation with head coach Wes Schroeder. We did talk some more about his offense, which seems to be hitting its stride as we enter week 4 against Heath in this non-league game. But if you take a look at Beckett Long, this is his first year as a starter, junior for this Blue Aces squad. 50% completion percentage last week against Johnstown Monroe. So obviously you'd like that to be a little bit higher, 10 of 20. But he's been getting more efficient as the season's been going on. 113 passing yards, but the big statistic is 101 rush yards. So this kid is clearly a dual threat at quarterback. 3 passing touchdowns, 2 of those went to Dante Verasso, who I think is far and away the best receiver in the Licking County League. You could maybe argue a couple other kids, but I mean, this kid just clearly has all the measurables, all the tools. But Beckett Long has clearly been improving as the season's been going on. And Wes Schroeder talked about this as well, that Beckett Long and this offense, they've kind of missed Verasso at different points in some of these games. They definitely could be getting him the ball a lot more. He did have 2 touchdowns last week, which is obviously huge, but he only caught the ball 4 times and only had a little over 40 yards receiving. And as dominant as a receiver as he is, his catch radius, he can get virtually any ball. He can pull it in one-handed. They got to be able to hit him more. This defense, although it's been fantastic, don't get me wrong, but the defense is not going. Obviously, it wins you championships, but it can't be the reason you win every single game. You need your offense to step up some. The offense has been getting better. That's kind of the perk of having such a really good defense, is that your offense can go through some of these growing pains a little bit, and it makes life a little bit easier for your offense. But Beckett Long is getting more efficient, which is really good. That's what we like to see. And so we'll see it on display here tonight. So we just need to see more efficiency out of Beckett Long in this offense. Only 113 passing yards, but he only threw it 20 times, completed 10 of them. Heath is a super good team, returning a lot of talent. And so we'll dive into the Heath side of things here now. But before I do, definitely want to shout out our sponsor again, Max Effort Muscle, down here, based out of this area. The best tasting protein and every other supplement that you can think of in the game. We love everything that they do, and of course they support us in every way possible as well. Like Aaron said at the top of the broadcast, that we have a Max Effort Player of the Game, where Player of the Game gets a special little package, a T-shirt, some protein, and some things. The player that has the performance of the game on the winning side tonight. So really looking forward to it. We really appreciate Max Effort, everything that they do. Go check them out on social. Seems like they have a deal going on pretty much all the time, so go check out what they've got going on their website. But let's take a look at the Heath side of things. Talked to head coach Tim Ward earlier in the week as well, and his offense has done a really good job running the football. They had over 200 yards rushing last week. They did lose to Norwayne, though, but a large part of that was because they dug themselves a little bit of a hole early. They had 5 turnovers. Now, not all of those turnovers were necessarily their fault. I mean, there was a bad snap, which Tim Ward talked about it. Their center has really only had a couple bad snaps in his entire career, and one of them just happened to be last week. That happens sometimes. So one bad snap, one of the interceptions that were thrown by Heath, it was meant to be thrown out of bounds, and a defender made an incredible play and was able to force a turnover. And so Heath got down 28-0 at halftime, and those 5 turnovers, certainly factored into the result of that game. Getting down early and then you just not being able to quite climb out of that hole late. They did outscore Norwayne 25-10 in the second half, so clearly they were able to clean things up and put together a valiant effort just to even get back into that game and only lose by 2 possessions. So it was a really great job by Tim Ward and Heath just to get back into the game, it was just a little bit too big of a hole to climb out of, which is, it's hard for any team to turn the ball over 5 times and come back and win. But head coach Tim Ward talked about it on Stadium Drive earlier in the week on the podcast. He's got even more confidence in his quarterback, Braden Bayless, to just go out there and keep slinging it. He talked about not taking the playmaker out of the playmaker. He still wants them to go out there, throw the football, throw it with confidence. Don't think about the last play, whether it was a touchdown pass or whether it was an interception. Good, bad, whatever it is, you just got to keep on rolling, keep on throwing. That's what he was really impressed about last week. Even though they lost to Norwayne, Bayless kept on throwing the football, kept throwing it, kept slinging it, and kept on pushing up until there were 000s on the clock, even though it was a loss. So head coach Tim Ward here on Stadium Drive, Week 4. Thanks so much for joining us live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And I'll see you in a few minutes after you hear from head coach Tim Ward.
All right, we're here with head coach Tim Ward with the Heath Bulldogs ahead of Week 4 as they take on Granville in LCL play. And Coach Ward, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today on a Wednesday ahead of Week 4. I do want to dive into the game last week. You dropped your first game of the year, and you kind of got into a big hole early, down 28-0 at halftime. You had the 5 turnovers, but you did outscore them in the second half, 25-10. Outplayed them, but it just kind of got into a hole early that maybe you just couldn't quite get out of. But with those turnovers, the 4 picks and the fumble, was it just kind of bad luck, tipped balls? Was it just missed reads? Like, kind of what went into the performance in the first half that kind of set you back early?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of things. First of all, we got never want to take the playmaker out of the playmaker. So what I mean by that is I'm never going to tell a kid like Braden Bayless, who does so many special things with a football, not to be special. And what makes him special is the fact that he can run around and he can make plays. We had a couple turnovers early. He threw a couple interceptions, maybe 3 or 4 bad snaps in his career. It just so happened that one of them was Friday night. But even with that, I mean, we dig a hole, but we still got to be able to capitalize. We still got to be able to stop them when we turn the ball over. We still got to be able to put the ball in the end zone when we're driving. And so, I mean, we can sit here and say that I wish we wouldn't have had those turnovers, or that maybe this could have went a little bit different way. Or, I mean, we could even say that one of the interceptions was 6 feet out of bounds. Whatever we want to say. But bottom line is we got to be able to put the ball in the end zone and stop them from scoring. We had to dig our way out of it.
Now, I assume the confidence in your quarterback, Braden Bayless, like you said, you never want to take the playmaker out of the playmaker. So I assume your confidence level in him is still high. And to bounce back this week against Granville, their defense, I mean, they've only allowed, I think, 8 points all year. They are just their defense is great, but I assume your confidence level in your quarterback Bayless is still very high. Despite the interceptions, despite the one that was an insane interception, throwing the ball out of bounds, and somehow a defender still comes up with it. But I assume your confidence level is still high in him.
Yeah, if anything, I'd say actually my confidence level is higher in him because what I saw was not necessarily just the interceptions, but the way he bounced back from those. The way that when push came to shove and when it came down to the final moments of the game, he was putting the team on his back, and he was continuing to push as hard as he possibly could, along with our offensive line and our running backs, our receivers, our defense coming up big. I mean, he wants that. He wants that pressure on him. He wants the spotlight on him, and he's willing to accept that. When you are willing to accept those kind of challenges, there's going to be some difficulties along the road.
Yeah. Now, talk about how you're going to attack this Granville defense, because like I said, they've only allowed 8 points in 3 games so far, but it seems like maybe their run game or their run defense is probably the area that if there was a weak point, it would be that, because they gave up 200 yards on the ground last week, even though they won in a shutout. You had 200 yards rushing yourself in the game against Norwayne, and Bayless and your running back Connor Corbett have 10 touchdowns combined through 3 games. Is running the football, you think, going to be more of an emphasis going into the game? I mean, obviously it depends on game flow and everything like that, but like, what are you game planning in practice to try to get ready for that Granville defense and how you're going to attack it?
Yeah, well, first off, you have to be able to run the football. I mean, very rarely, I go up there to the football finals every year with our coaching staff, and very rarely do you see a team win up there that can't run the football. But on the same side of things, I mean, they can't throw the football either. So I think that might be one of the biggest things that Granville has taken advantage of so far this year is they've forced teams to be one dimensional, to either have to run the ball to be able to move it or to have to throw the ball to be able to move it. I think we're going to be doing both. We're going to give them a picture of something they haven't seen yet this year. Our ability to run the football out of the pocket, to run the ball in the middle, to run the ball on the outside. I think we're going to just try and capitalize on that board maybe haven't seen yet.
Now, defensively, what's the key? Because, Dante Verasso is probably the best receiver in the Licking County League. He had 2 touchdowns last week. Beckett Long's a dual-threat quarterback. He had a couple touchdown passes, but he had a rushing touchdown last week. And he's just really good with his feet, extending plays, running, throwing. He does it all. What's the key defensively for your guys as you take on the Granville offense that seems to be now, like the defense has been strong for them all year, but now their offense, it seems like it's hitting its stride as the season goes on?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I mean, they've got a couple sophomores in Kirby and Jacob Culver. Both of those guys seem to be becoming more and more a part of the offense as the year goes on. And that happens a lot when you have a freshman or a sophomore who's in a big-time starting position. You kind of ease them in slowly, week by week, a couple more touches, a couple more plays that they're a part of. And now by week 4, I don't think there's one guy that we can take away. It's not just the Verasso show. It's not just the music. Playmakers all over the place. So I think what's going to be extremely important for us to be able to stop them is to play sound defense, to make sure that we have 11 guys, each of them doing their own job, but then trusting others to do their job as well, and just kind of playing complementary football there defensively, getting after the quarterback, making him get the ball out of his hands, because obviously, like you said, he is a kid who can do some things with the football, both running and throwing. But I think what he does best is he just facilitates their offense, and he's extremely efficient with what he does. So we're going to try and create a system that will cause him to be a little bit less efficient in what he does. We know we'll probably give up some yards at some point, but it's about how often that we can manage to get them behind the sticks and take advantage of putting them in situations they don't want to be in.
Well, Coach, I really appreciate the time, chopping it up about week 4, getting ready for Granville and, talking for 6 or 7 minutes. But best of luck this week and get back in the win column, man.
Absolutely. Dogs.
So that was Tim Ward with the Heath Bulldogs getting ready for this game against Granville. Still confident? Absolutely, in his quarterback, Braden Bayless. 15 of 27 last week, only 55% completion percentage, but they had to throw the ball a lot to get back into this football game against Norwayne that they eventually ended up losing. 192 passing yards, 117 yards on the ground, 2 passing touchdowns, as well as a rushing touchdown. And then, of course, the 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions, and the fumble on the missed snap there. So obviously, if you want to get a game like that just kind of out of the way early in the season. Not every game's going to go perfect, and that was the case for Heath. But they fought valiantly. I mean, to outscore Norwayne 25-10 in the second half, almost come back and really, make it a one-score game late. And from there, who knows what can happen. They put up a great fight against Norwayne and just came up short, just too big of a hole to kind of climb out of in that football game. But super looking forward to this one tonight. And I do want to take you, though, to some games that are going on around the area. So let's take a look at Eastern and Northeastern Ohio briefly. Anything highlighted in blue, the schools highlighted in blue are the teams that we're covering this week, and those are the games you'll see on Unreal Highlights next week. Garaway at Carrollton, West Branch at Ridgewood, Barberton at Tallmadge, Indian Valley at Cambridge, Union Local at Harrison Central, John Glenn at Coshocton, Maysville at Tri-Valley, Meadowbrook at Crooksville, Riverview at Philo, Morgan at Sheridan, West Muskingum at New Lexington, and Lakewood at Zanesville. So those are the games going on around Eastern and Northeastern Ohio. Now let's take a look briefly at Central and Western Ohio. We haven't shown you many of these games this year, at least on this show. Miamisburg at Centerville, Dublin-Jerome at Dublin-Kaufman, Scioto at Westerville South, Reynoldsburg at Gahanna, Heath and Granville tonight, of course, Fairfield Union at Hamilton Township, Hilliard-Darby at Hilliard-Davidson, Jonathan Alder at North Union, New Albany, the Eagles are at Lancaster, Olentangy Orange at Olentangy, Olentangy Berlin at Olentangy Liberty. So the four schools in that school district going to battle, and then Westerville Central at Upper Arlington. So plenty of games going on around the area here tonight in Ohio that we're covering. Again, we cover 27 schools, so so many games for us to be at, and we're thankful for every little bit of it. But just a final note on this game before we get started here in about half an hour for Heath and Granville. The history, like we mentioned at the top of the show, since 2013, they've only played 6 times, and Granville has won 5 of those 6. Heath won in 2016, that year that they went 16-0, or not 16-0, but they went 10-0, and then lost in the first round of the playoffs to Philo. And the game that they won against Granville that year was at Heath. It was a home game for the Bulldogs, but they have not won in Granville. And we didn't even look back far enough to see when they last won here at Granville. So it's been a while, but both of these teams are immensely talented, and so I'm super excited to see what it looks like tonight. And, yeah, man, we got Aaron Sprague, the man. He's on the Granville side getting you some highlights, and then our man Sean Fisher out of the Columbus office is with Heath. So the best in the biz, getting you the highlights from these games, from this game, and you'll see that next week on Unreal Highlights. Want to thank our sponsors again, Max Effort Muscle down here in front of us, based in this area, and we love everything that they do. They've got some great supplements. I use quite a few of them. Got myself a t-shirt as well. I love those guys, and they put out some great content as well, and they've always got deals going on, so check them out on their website, on social media, on Instagram, Max Effort Muscle. Corey G and the gang, just they're so good. I love those guys. But thank you to them. Thanks so much for joining us here on Stadium Drive Week 4. Make sure you follow us on social media, on Twitter, for updated scores on all the games that are going on. We'll try to get out as many games as we can, so that way you can stay up to date with the school maybe that you went to back in the day, or just if you're just a big fan of local high school football, I mean, we're the place to look. We'll get you all the score updates the best we can from all the games. I'll be here putting out social media updates from this game, Heath and Granville. But I'm so excited because Granville's defense has been so good through 3 weeks. Can they keep it up against this potent Heath offense? 10 rushing touchdowns combined between Connor Corbett and Braden Bayless. They're super effective running the ball, and Bayless is a dual threat quarterback, just like Beckett Long is for Granville. Granville's defense has given up a lot of yardage as far as running the football goes, so I'm very interested to see how the Blue Aces hold up, at least in the run game, against Heath's offense. And then, you know, how does Granville do offensively? Because like I said, they've been improving, getting more efficient. Beckett Long needs to find Dante Verrasso more, though, because he's just such a talented receiver, and only getting him the ball. Granted, they won 31-0 last week against Johnstown Monroe, but getting him the ball only 4 times isn't going to cut it later on in the season once you get into some of these league games and as you make a push, you know, towards winning the LCL and making the playoffs and trying to make a run in the playoffs. But that'll just about wrap it up for me here on Stadium Drive. Really appreciate you joining us here for Stadium Drive Week 4 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Make sure you check out Stadium Drive on YouTube with the interviews that you saw with Wes Schroeder and Tim Ward previous weeks as well. And we'll see you next week. But follow us on all the socials for score updates from this game, as well as score updates from other games around the area. Will Ford from Storied Rivals signing off for now. Stadium Drive Week 4. We'll see you in Week 5. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care.